rangers, forest workers, hunters, and other woods people of Reddit. What is your scary experience in the woods that you still can't explain? Part 1. We always built a tiki house in our woods, just some normal kids, and had loads of fun. But every week, when we came back, it was destroyed, and we were sad as hell, and always built a new one. One day we saw a guy in a black hoodie taking our sticks apart. We never came back. Mine was not of monsters but of humans. My friends and I were high in the woods deep in the Sierra Nevadas in the California backcountry, and decided to travel a few miles off a path to reach a river and shoot at targets with our .22. The path is littered with deer bones and claw marks from bears, so we are freaking out a bit but finally make it to where we set up camp. I notice off in the distance about a half mile upstream the river there are two men walking towards us in the exact direction we are firing our gun. I yell at the guys for them to stop shooting, and we just watch these men, wide-eyed and in their late 20s and early 30s walking quickly alongside the river when suddenly they both decide to jump in. I should say at this point that the river is moving very quickly and could easily sweep you under and is definitely not safe for a casual swim. We watch as both the men are swept away towards us downstream. One of my friends, we'll call him Mike, decides to be brave and get close to the edge and extend a piece of wood for them to grab as they're about to pass us. Both the men latch on and Mike is a hero pulling them to shore. When everyone catches their breath we ask the men what they were doing out here as it's super remote and they were at least 3 or 4 miles from the nearest trail, and why they both jumped in the deadly river. They give us short answers like, oh, we were just having fun boys and just free swimming the river, while they're leering at us. Immediately the hairs on the back of my neck stand up and every fiber in my body tells me they mean us harm. We tell them we are going to head back to the trail and they say they're coming with us. Given that we are so far off from civilization and these guys are clearly high on something and a danger to themselves, we reluctantly agree to allow them to follow us. It was the most quiet hike of my life. I felt them trying to feel out if they could take us in a fight. There were 3 of us and 2 of them, and we had a .22, but we're young scarily adults. I don't know how to explain it, but the hike was us constantly positioning against each other with body language without ever directly fighting. They would get close to the gun and try to both be near it, then we would counter by getting between them and the gun as naturally as possible while hiking up a path that was littered in bear claw marks and dung. We finally make it to the car and they decide we weren't suitable targets and moved on. No idea what 2 random guys were doing risking their life in a freezing cold raging river in the Sierra Nevadas, or why they felt the need to size up if they could attack 3 random teens, but I'm glad nothing happened that day. Not anything like this myself, but a friend told me this story. So he goes with a buddy to hike a trail near our town, northern Washington state, so lots of woods and trees. When they get to the trailhead, there is one other car there, and he remembers seeing a person in that car. The person in the car was just staring at them with what he described as a really white unchanging face. He kept staring right at them without trying to hide it or look away. My friend got creeped out and decided to leave. In the next week or 2 after that, a couple of hikers and a ranger turned up dead in that same area. Pretty sure they caught the guy, but I don't remember if his photo was posted. Super creepy. I was driving from Tucson to Denver in the middle of the night. Got tired, was pulling off, and crawled in a sleeping bag in the desert far away from the 2-lane blacktop I was on. Highway 666 by the way, it's since been renamed because everybody was stealing the signs. Anyway, pull off the road onto a dirt road and then a little further. Kind of hid the truck behind some vegetation and tossed down a sleeping bar and pad in the middle of pitch black huge star New Mexico night. No one around, no light, nothing at all. Visibility 4 miles. I'm completely effing alone in pitch black nothing, and getting wound down in my eyes are getting droopy. Then I hear it. It sounds goofy to say, but it's the same Indian music you'd hear in old black and white westerns. Native music, voices and a drum. I literally think I'm dreaming, and when it starts I'm effing petrified, because that noise just appearing out of nothing simply put ice in my veins. Relax a little and unfreeze, and try to be logical about what I'm hearing, which has no physical manifestation of its origin. So, thinking logically, now instead of pure panic, I could be on the reservation at this point. Perhaps it's coming from behind a previously unseen hill. I get up, look around. I don't see anything at all. It kind of comes and goes in volume. Doesn't seem to be coming from a direction. I have no clue. I looked for evidence and didn't find any. Crawled back in the bag because I'd been driving for hours and they sang all night. Logic tells me it had to be a group of people I didn't see. But I looked and there were no ancillary noises like talking or stopping or anything. Just that Indian drum and the hi-ya. What was originally terrifying became calming and I ended up sleeping fantastically. Later learned that was a terrible stretch of road for very bad things to happen. It sort of lived up to its 666 moniker for X and bad shit occurring apparently. Backwoods hiking / camping trip up in Maine. Trail intersected overgrown logging road. Checked topo map. Saw logging toad lead to isolated pond. Hiked a pond. Found small clearing. Perfect spot to camp. Went to bed shortly after sunset, 8:30 p.m.ish. Woke up around 1:30 a.m. to distant but loud noises coming from all angles around us. Up the logging road both directions, across the pond, and in the woods. Deep bass why groans and hoots, occasionally hitting higher pitched noted. Been in the woods for most of my adult life. Have come in contact with just about all the larger mammals of the Northeast, and have never heard those noises before. Haven't heard them again either. Will never forget that sound. I was once canoeing the boundary waters between Minnesota and Canada. These aren't your normal backyard ponds. The boundary waters are thousands of enormous lakes interconnected with each other. Think mini Great Lakes. We had been canoeing and camping along the lakes for about a week at this point. We didn't really have an itinerary, just planned to boat and camp, fish, and live off the land 2 weeks. We had a GPS and a sat phone to call a helicopter for pickup whenever we were done. Anyway, about a week in, and we were set to canoe a few hours to the next lake. An hour or so in, and we are in the center of an extremely long and narrow lake. Unfortunately, a storm started to blow in, and the waves on the lake swelled to 2+ feet. Too much for our dinky canoes. We pull off to a random clearing on the shore and set up camp in rush to avoid being totally thrashed by a rainstorm. We just set up camp and hunkered down for the night. By the next morning it had cleared up. We started walking up the coast of the lake about 200 feet from our camp looking for a good fishing spot. What we actually found was another campsite. However, it was absolutely wrecked. Trash strewn everywhere, tent collapsed and torn, clothes on the ground. At first we were just like disgusted like what assholes did this, or left their shit out to be bear food. The more we looked around though, the weirder things seemed though. For one, their garbage was still hoisted into a tree to keep it safe from bears, but the whole bag was ripped open despite being 30 feet in the air. Second, literally everything except the canoes was still at the campsite. Clothes, packs, food, rope, pants, like a serious set of hiking equipment. Enough for 2 or 3 people. Half of it was trashed and torn open, mostly the packs, tent, and clothes. The other half was totally untouched, but thrown on the ground. Like somebody noped the hell out of there in nothing but their long johns, ditching hundreds of dollars of gear in the process. We waited a couple hours and eventually called it back to our helicopter crew, but they hadn't been aware of anybody else, or gotten any distress calls. We eventually just left everything and moved camp. Everybody was pretty upset by it, and a day or two later we ended the whole trip early, because it seemed like nobody wanted to be out anymore. It was the weirdest thing I'd ever seen. First thought was bear attack, but there was food left uneaten, and I've seen bear attacks on camps before, but nothing like this. Bears rip open packs, and go after food, and are generally pretty easy to scare away. What still sticks with me is why all their clothes and packs were still there with half being totally destroyed and half being into shade. I still don't get it. I've done a lot of other camping and hiking, rafting, and biking all around the country and I've never had any other weird experiences like that. I spent a few nights in a lean-to. I fit snugly inside, underneath a wood almaca, falling asleep atop a bed of pine foliage. In the middle of the night I hear and see this long black appendage impact, and then slide down the top. I had no weapons, save for the hatchet, and I wouldn't make it out undetected, so I watched the entrance intensely for a few hours. Turns out I had leaned my bow against the shelter, and the wind blew it over in the night. When I was a Boy Scout, back in 1985, we spent a night in Lean Toss, while earning our winter camping badges. In the middle of the night, we awoke to the sounds of rapid fire gunshots right outside. We couldn't see any muzzle flashes or anything like that, just bang bang bang, over and over again. There was nothing to be done about it, but cower together, and wait for the sun to come up. It turns out the cases of pop we had outside did not fare too well in the deep cold of the Canadian winter. The gunshots were cans of pop exploding. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe.